All right, guys, today we are going to do ARP spoofing. We're going to do a man-in-the-middle attack where we can monitor what someone else is doing on the network, and are even going to capture a password that they enter on the network, that we can monitor that much of what they're doing, where they're going in live time. So to do this, let me pull up the lab so you can see it here. Now, this lab can only be done in our virtual machine and on our lab environment. The tool that we're going to be using, a man-in-the-middle tool, is only available on the version of ParrottOS that we're using. So just be aware of that. The program that we're using has actually been depreciated and is no longer being supported. But it's still a pretty cool tool and allows you to do some pretty cool things. So anyway, just be aware of that. This is not something you can do on your own equipment unless you have this exact version of Parrot. So what we're going to be doing as part of this attack is we're going to be this bad guy here in the middle. We are going to hijack and spoof this, the target's computer and the router is what we're going to do. And so we have to connect both to the victim and to the router out to the internet, and connect and interact as both. And we're going to be manipulating the information in between as it goes back and forth. Okay. And so we're first going to pretend to be the attacker. Then we're also going to pretend to be the router, and back and forth. And so we have to bypass both. Right. And so we're going to do that by spoofing and by ARP poisoning. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get the IP addresses of each device. So if you're not sure how to do that in Windows, oops, I'm going to have to open up my Windows one again. All right, so here's my Windows system. The command so if you just open up the terminal, you go in here to search, you type CMD to open up a command prompt, and you type the command ipconfig. And you should see the IP address here under Ethernet 0. And it should be a 192.168.1 address that you should see. What you should also see here is the default gateway. This is the router. So when I ask you, in the instructions to put the IP of the router, this is what it should be. Okay. I've also listed it here in the instructions. Okay. Because networks change, the default gateway address may change. So I didn't put that in the instructions because that is something that just changed and something you have to look up. So be aware of that. So you have to have that IP address and you have to have the router. Okay. Then on the ParrottOS side, let me go ahead and open that up. The command to look at the IP address on a Linux machine is IPA. And to do this, what you're looking for is this etho0, and here is the IP address of it. You are going to have a different IP address than I have in the same network. So the IP address for this Linux machine is 57. Now, for this to work, we need to be able to ping. The two PCs need to be on the same network, and they need to be able to ping each other. Now, what I've learned when I went through this morning is the only way to do this is to turn off the firewall on Windows. Okay, again, that's not in the instructions. So if you don't know how to turn off the firewall, all you do is you go here to the search, you type firewall, you go to the Windows Defender firewall settings, and you turn off these networks. Let's see. Now mine I have turned off. See, so here you can turn them off, and you turn them off. Okay. So this is kind of a two-prong attack. We'll go like, well, this only works if they turn off their firewall. Who's going to do that? Well, there might be two parts of this attack, right? You have to figure out how to get them to turn off their firewall, right? They may leave their computer open while they go to the bathroom or go get a snack or something like that. There's your opportunity to turn off the firewall. There's other attacks that you can use by doing keystroke injection or something like that, where you can turn off their firewall. But for this attack to work, they need to turn off their firewall to verify that this works. Okay, so these are some tests to make sure, because this is, the conditions have to be just right for this to work. Otherwise, you're going to be facing a lot of frustration. Okay, so to make sure it works, you need to be able to ping this system. So if the IP address for Windows is like mine, 192.168.1.150, I should be able to ping that here on my Linux computer. Ping 192.168.1.1.150, which is the IP address of my Windows machine. And as you can see, I can ping. Now in Linux, this is going to keep going. The way to stop it is you do Control C. Control C will stop it. Okay, and same thing in Windows, I should be able to ping my Linux machine. So if I go ping 192.168.1.57, how do I know it's 57? Well, because I looked it up. I used that IPA command, right? IPA, and I got the IP address right there. That's the IP address of, and then I should be able to hit enter, and it should ping. Okay. So this is the first thing you should check, that you can communicate back and forth between your two devices, okay, for this to work. All right. Now that you can make sure that your system works, we're going to be doing a lot of IP address things. So you record your IP address for your Windows machine here, just so that you have it recorded, because you're going to need to look it up and use it again. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do turn on IP forwarding on our ParrottOS or our Linux system. This is the command that you use to do the IP forward and turning it on your Linux system. Okay, this allows you to forward IP addresses to your system. So let me go back to the Parrot. We'll do that. Clear the screen here. Now you also want to make sure your root, it's probably a good practice, because all these commands, you have to be the administrator of the system. So if you're in Linux, you can use this command, sudo, this is in the instructions, -i. You hit enter and it's going to ask you for a password. Well, what password are you going to use? You're going to use the password you use to log into your parent system, your ParrottOS system, which is a capital P ASSWORD. So password with a capital P. Now you should see that your command prompt changed from a $sign to a £sign or a hashtag. That shows that you're the administrator now. Okay. So let's do this IP forwarding. We're going to do echo 1. Basically, we're just going to change the value of this path, this IP forwarding file, to 1. Okay, so proc system, I believe it's net. IPv4, IP forwarding. Okay. If you don't get an error, you did it right. If you got an error, you did something wrong. Check it again. Okay. So now that we've activated IP forwarding, going to look up the IP address of our system here, right? We're going to record that. Now we're going to start spoofing. All right, so the first thing we're going to start spoofing is the router. So this is a long command. The first IP address you hear, so it's sudo. If you're already administrator, you don't need to do sudo, but anyway, arp spoof, I for interface, so which interface are you going to be using, right? Which Ethernet port you're going to be using, and we're going to use etho0. That's the first Ethernet port on our Linux machine. And then our target system is going to be the Windows IP address. And then the second IP address you're going to put here is the router's IP address. Okay. Now, don't confuse those, because in the next step, you're going to reverse those. You're going to reverse the Windows and the router's IP address. Okay. So let's first do this. I give the explanation here. So the first one is your Windows IP address. The second is your router's IP address. So let's go ahead and do this command. So this is the command, sudo, which if you have the hashtag here, you don't have to have the sudo. We're going to use the ARP spoof tool. That's the tool that we're going to use to spoof an IP address here, our ARP, and we're going to use interface Ethernet 0, and we're going to target the Windows machine. So that is the Windows IP address. And then the second IP address is the router's IP address. All this is in the instructions in the document. And I'm going to go ahead and execute this. And this is what you should be getting. You should see some spoofing of a MAC address and IP addresses. We're spoofing, right? We're doing an ARP spoof where we're substituting MAC addresses with the Windows IP address. Okay? You let this continue to run. You do not interrupt this. We want the spoofing to continue to happen on the network. Now, you need to open up another tab in the terminal here. The way you do that is just go to here to File, and you go Open Tab. Now, I've already opened up a tab here. Once you click that, it opens up another tab, and you get these tabs along the top here. So then in another terminal window, oops, let's see if I have it here. No. I'm going to do the ARP spoof on interface 0. Let me make sure I'm doing this right. Yep. -T for our target. This time I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to flip the router and the Windows IP address. So instead of putting the Windows IP address first, I'm going to put the router's IP address. Where did I get this? Where did I get the IP address of this router? Maybe you're still saying, where did I get the IP address of the Windows? I don't know. Well, it's the default gateway. If you go to your Windows machine, it's right here. Boom, it's the default gateway. That's your router right there. And that's where I got the router IP address. I typed the ipconfig command that I showed you earlier. That's how I got all this. Okay. So the command that we did in the other window, we had the Windows IP address here and then the router, and now we're switching it around, right? We need to do an ARP spoof for the router. So I'm going to let this run. So in one window, we're spoofing, doing an ARP spoof here for the Windows. And in the second one here, we're doing it for the router. And you let this continue to run through this entire attack. So now we're spoofing both ends, right? We're right here in the middle now. We're able to spoof the MAC addresses of both of these machines, and we're sitting here right in the middle. Now we need to connect and build this secure connection with a man-in-the-middle attack so that we can monitor everything this Windows machine is doing. Okay? So this is kind of a long command. This is in the instructions. You need to make sure you type these carefully. Okay? So this is going to initiate the Man-in-the-Middle Framework tool. So that's what we're doing. We're doing the Man-in-the-Middle Framework tool. You open up another tab to do this. Look at this. I have 4 tabs open. You just keep hitting File, Tab Open. So we're going to do the Man-in-the-Middle Framework. We're going to do an ARP spoof the gateway. What's the gateway? The gateway is your router. So we're going to put the router's IP address. And then what machine are we going to target? We're going to target the Windows machine, and that's the IP address of the Windows machine. And we're going to do all of this on what interface? That's what the I stands for, interface. We're going to do that on our Ethernet port, Ethernet 0 port. So once I've done that, I hit enter. We let it run. You should get SMB server online. That means it's running. Now we can spy on the Windows 10 machine. So I'm going to go here to the Windows 10 machine. In the instructions, it tells you to open up Chrome. Doesn't really matter what browser. Chrome isn't installed here. If you like Chrome, go ahead and install it on your Windows virtual machine here. I'm just going to use Microsoft Edge. So I'll have to wait for that to open here. Well, hopefully that's opening. Go down here to the instructions. The website we're going to go to is HackMe. It's a website that's unencrypted. We know it's unencrypted because it's just HTTP. If the website was encrypted, we wouldn't be as successful with this attack because all the communications will be encrypted, right? So this is a website that's not encrypted. It's just HTTP. It is a hacking website. And so again, this says Chrome, but we don't need to have Chrome. Any web browser will do. Let me try and launch this again. There we go. So if you look back here on the ParrottOS, it's still not doing anything. But now I'm going to go to that HackMe. So I'm going to type http://hackme. I'm going to hit enter to go to the site. My system doesn't freeze up here. There. Now let's see what's happening on Parrot. Should be picking that up. It's not. Oh, because it's probably all cached. That's the problem. I've already went to this site. So let's clear the cache here. Let's see if that changes it. Because we should be seeing something right here. So if I've been to the site already, it might just be pulling up the cache, not necessarily don't know where it is in this. Yeah, I want to clear everything. All right, let's see if that did the trick. Yep, it looks like it's taking longer to load. There we go. Look at this. So all I did was clear out the history in the cache because it was pulling up from the Windows machine itself because I went to that website earlier. But look at this. I can now see what website I'm spying on that Windows machine. I can see that I went to the Hack Me website. You guys see that? Now, what's even cooler is if we use Wireshark. Now, that's pretty much the whole lab, right? If you go to other websites, you should be able to see what they're pulling up on the other websites and everything else. But I'm going to show you how you can capture passwords, which is not part of this lab. But I do demonstrate it, but it's not mandatory. See, you should be able to see the Hack Me. But now I'm going to try and log in to the Hack Me website and see if you can capture my password using Wireshark. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Wireshark, which I should already have open here. And I'm going to start capturing all these packets. Because I'm the man in the middle. Everything that the Windows machine is doing, I should be doing here. So I'm going to go click on sign in. And I actually don't have an account for this site. I wouldn't want to have one for this site. And I'm going to go ahead and sign in. So I'm going to use my Metro email address, or you can make up an address because it's going to fail my login, but that's okay. And I'm going to type in a password. You guys won't be able to see it, but let's see if you're going to be able to see it in Wireshark. All right, then I'm going to click login and it'll fail. Oh snap, see, that email is already registered or whatever else. So let's go back over to Wireshark. I'm going to stop this capturing because we've already captured it. Once I clicked log in and it failed, and even if it did log in, it would still work. And then I'm going to filter for just HTTP traffic. So that's all I see here. There we go. There is our HTTP traffic. What I want to look for here is I want to look for a post. When I click on that login, and it should be towards the bottom, notice there's this post. Post is a type of HTTP command when you click on buttons and login information or to execute something by clicking on a button, you usually end up posting it. So if I click on one of these posts, I don't know which one it is, we'll have to check it out. And then you expand here the hypertext protocol, the HTTP layer. You should see that I'm on the Hack Me website here. And then in this third box down below is where I can actually see what is happening. And you can actually see the HTML code over here. Let's see if we captured my password, my username and password that I used to log in. Oh, I see it. Do you guys see it? So right here, it starts with U on this line right here. See right there, that U. Username equals, what does it equal? JT Bernard at. Now the at is converted to kind of its ASCII key, which is the parentheses or the percentage sign 40 at mccneb.edu. And then there's an and symbol. And then it says password equals, what's my password? What password did I enter there? Secret PASS was my password that I typed in. So I was just able to access what website they went to, what their username is, and what their password is with this man-in-the-middle attack. Just like that. Okay, and that is the lab. That's what the lab shows you how to do. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah,